Tonight's presentation is all about birds, and we're lucky to have two local experts who are going to talk to us about birds. And the reason we decided to do this is the upcoming Great Backyard Bird Count that's going to start in the next few days. It starts on February 12th, so in a couple of days. And it's something that I've not participated in the past.
When is the bird?
It's going to start in just a minute. It's something I've not participated in the past, and we thought, well, why not? Why don't we just try to do a little educational program to kickstart us into this, and maybe it's something we'll continue to do and encourage other folks to do. So we'll learn more about that from our two speakers in a minute. So I'm going to introduce them now. Our two speakers are, and I'm going to ask them for help on pronunciation, Wendy Tocci. Is that correct,
Sure.
Wendy?
Tocci.
Okay.
I knew you were talking to me.
I'm going for the Italian pronunciation. So she is the regional coordinator for the New York Breeding Bird Atlas in Ulster County. And Mark Dedea. Mark Dedea. Mark is the director of Forsyth Nature Center in Kingston and part of the John Burroughs Natural History Society. And so they're going to tell us a little bit about birds, some common birds you might see, some rare birds we might be lucky enough to see, and then a little bit about the Great Backyard Bird Count and how we can actually contribute to, I think it's actually a worldwide count, not just an American count or a North American count of birds that people observe. So I think there's all kinds of implications. Not yet. And all kinds of uses for the data that hopefully we'll learn about from Mark and Wendy as well. So I will give it up to Mark and Wendy. I don't know if one of you has a preference for going first, or if you spoke about that with Joanne.
I guess we could talk about the Breeding Bird Atlas quickly, Wendy, or would you rather we go right into the slideshow?
We could go into the slideshow and then I'll mention it at the end.
Okay. We'll dabble as we go through. Go ahead.
You're going to share your screen, or do you want me to share the screen and then I'll advance the slides, or?
That would probably be a safer move.
for me to.
I was ready for it, but yeah, let's err on the side of caution.
Okay. So I'm trying to share my screen, and it says host is disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, you should be able to now, Wendy.
Great, thank you. And this is not what I wanted to share.
Here's some birds.
Here it is.
Are you muted?
Okay. Nope. 1 minute. Okay.
All good?
We're good?
Yeah. So this is a real straightforward slide presentation. So as far as I'm concerned, any of those listening in or watching us, if they got a question, ask while it's still fresh in your mind before it slips away. And I think it'll kind of make our presentation a little bit more interesting. And hopefully we'll come up with an answer for you. To me, the Great Backyard Bird Count really is all about intending to be a family event, if not one walk or one 15-minute span looking out into the backyard feeders, the 4 days as a whole. Friday, very much so in normal times as a way for classmates, feeders that are outside the classroom window to participate and surely tagged with a lesson plan leading into it. And then Saturday and Sunday, organizations like the John Burroughs Natural History Society would typically lead field trips. And again, not just viewing birds in your backyard, but area hotspots, known locations to be really good for birding. And then Monday being a 3-day weekend, a holiday weekend, a chance for maybe the family as a whole unit to get out. Again, visit your local patch or do something a little bit more than just look at the backyard bird feeders, but really gives a 4-day opportunity to have a variety of and a real nice sampling of our local birds. And as Neil mentioned, this is global. It's the largest in terms of broadest reach citizen science project that's done in the world. The Christmas bird count season, which just ended, is the longest running, but it's basically in the Americas, whereas this great backyard bird count is global and really has been the impetus behind eBird, which we'll talk about during this slideshow.
I guess I'll get to this later.
Yeah, there is a website for the Great Backyard Bird Count, which we could direct you through that route. You could submit through the registering there. But I would say, and I hope you all would agree with me, that if you're not already, register on eBird. Go to ebird.org. It's free. It's easy to do. And you can submit your sightings on eBird, and they'll apply to the Great Backyard Bird Count during this 4-day weekend. But then later on in the spring, you may help with something like what's going on in New York State, why Wendy's here tonight to talk about the Breeding Bird Atlas. Your eBird submissions there will go into the data pool for that 5-year program, that study. And it's something that you can fall back on as a traveling birder to see, let's say, for example, I'm headed to Mystic, Connecticut this weekend. So I can look in New London County, Connecticut, and see where all the rare birds have been seen, or even a bird that I have never seen. You can have a needs or a wants that you can create. So a real way it's a great vehicle to kind of see what's going on. So it's a symbiotic thing. It's a great free resource for us as birders, but then it's also, part of a pool of a gigantic pool of data collection that's, the responsible partners of the National Audubon Society and Cornell University.
You can tell me when to change the slides.
Okay. I'm pretty sure I talked over all those subjects, huh? My darn slideshow.
I think you talked over this one as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so as I mentioned, I am taking my 3-year-old Neil away this weekend to the Mystic Aquarium, and I'll be sure to bring my binoculars and my scope and view the Long Island Sound and submit eBird lists, which, will be in Connecticut, but all part of our greater backyard. This Friday at work, we'll do some eBird submissions at Forsyth Park in Kingston, small little 18-acre park. But currently we have, for example, what can happen in your backyard and why this is a significant thing, a significant event is that things like common ravens can nest in a little 18-acre city park. Which is going on currently. A pair that was confirmed breeders last year have started to add to their nest this year and are already in the process of courtship, and the kind of refitting their nest is all part of that. And they are very vocal and defensive of their area. So that's a pretty neat thing for me to see on a daily basis while I'm working. There are a few species, for the most part, we think of this count as birds, wintering birds, but there are birds like ravens and great horned owls and our bald eagles that are very well into the breeding process. Locally. So great to find those species while you're doing this count, and including things like NB for nest building, right, Wendy?
Right.
Is everybody still awake? Does anybody have questions? So big time migration patterns and the year-to-year changes and the long-term trends are all things that, as a longtime birder, birding, I've been birding, longer than the great backyard bird count has been going on. We're seeing significant changes, and they're happening in not a natural manner, not something that is going on over 100 years, but rather decades time. For those of you who feed birds, to see things like Carolina wrens or tufted titmice or mockingbirds or northern cardinals, those are kind of taken for granted in the Hudson Valley, but 50 years ago, not so much. And in particular, things like Carolina wrens are now surviving hard winters and deep snowfall where they wouldn't have in the past as they made a northerly advance. But now with so many folks feeding the birds, that's greatly helped. And obviously with the more moderate temperatures, that doesn't hurt as well. So we see significant changes, and this count really helps point those out as a true kind of winter count. I mentioned earlier the Christmas bird counts, and the reality of it is we hardly set into winter during that season. So this is really kind of the dead of winter as we've come to realize the last few weeks. Temperatures and the snow. I think we're good there, Wendy. So speaking of the Carolina wren, the one thing we need to do when we do submit these eBird lists is to at least get out there for 15 minutes. That was the one thing we really need to make sure of. But if you can install eBird on your smartphone, you can start your list and track your walk if you are to take a walk to, let's say, Kingston Point Park, like I will on Saturday morning with the John Burroughs field trip. That would be one thing I would encourage you to do, to install eBird on your phone so that you can have, let's say, an eagle's nest is spotted while you're driving. If you can pull over and identify the point with your phone and bird on nest, let's say now, or nest building, it would be a very mobile way to record your data, but just as easily do all this on your laptop. It has kind of taken away the old-fashioned way of doing things. I have a whole boatload of little notebooks that were filled out with golf pencils that were lodged in my back pocket, and now they're illegible and can't even tell what year they were written. But you'll have all this collected on your eBird account and can look back, can put in historical records. And again, this is all free at your disposal. So it's really something to take advantage of. Yeah, to make a new checklist each of the 4 days, make more than one each day. Is anybody, maybe I'll ask for a little participation here. Is anybody listening in on eBird now or using eBird?
You can tell them that I just downloaded it.
I am not. Everybody, if anybody wants to speak up, you should be able to unmute yourself, or you can type into the chat.
More French fries.
And I've been monitoring the chat to see if anybody has any questions.
I don't
Somebody mentioned that this is the first winter that they've noticed Carolina wrens, and we've been seeing them on our feeder as well.
Yeah, they've been in our region for as a regular breeder and a year-round resident for about 4 decades. There were times where, like what you've seen in the last week or so, where we've had a fair amount of snow cover. That would really knock down the winter population because they are foraging at the foundations for spiders and things like that. Behind nooks and crannies, low to the ground, not foraging behind the bark like other insectivores would this time of year, like creepers or woodpeckers. So if we did get a deep snow, that would be pretty detrimental to the wintering populations. But as I mentioned, with us having more moderate, typically more moderate winters, and also with so many more people feeding the birds and putting out things like suet cakes and beef fat, things like that, that's really helped Carolina wrens out immensely in their survival, and they are wintering over. And on our Christmas bird counts, there's a steady kind of, I'd say this year table, but kind of a steady incremental natural increase of wintering Carolina wrens from what used to be kind of a pretty neat sighting, like I said, when I first started birding.
So
So,
often hear them before you see them.
Yeah.
I feel like I
And
hear them everywhere.
They are one of the species. We're kind of right in that moment where we do have the birds, wintering birds that are at our feeders, but we are also at first light in the morning starting to hear birds sing their courtship song. And mid-February to early March is when we start to get these first signs of spring. So species like northern cardinal, house finch, Carolina wren, those are all birds that we start to hear now in full vocalization as males courting. And the reason for that, in those species in particular, they are southern affinity birds. And the house finch is introduced to our region from the Southwest. Cardinals, like I mentioned earlier, are a southern bird, as are the Carolina wrens. And this would be kind of a typical time of year, typical length of day for them to start their courtship in the Carolinas or in Arizona. So everything is driven by the amount of daylight each day, and so the internal clock clicks on. And if you go out like this morning, a sunlit day, but it was 9 degrees, you would hear tea kettle, tea kettle, tea kettle, and you'd hear the northern cardinal singing, and really the warbling, real beautiful song of a house finch, kind of one of the first birds you really get full song out of. Get outside in May and it's a cacophony of song. All of our migrants are back and all are, with all their male bravado, and they're in full song. And it can be darn right loud in the morning. But now it's kind of nice to hear a few birds singing. There's going to always be communication, but now you're hearing song, and that really speaks to, the males trying to establish territory and identify a partner.
so Mark, I'm sorry, can I interrupt back to that last slide? So a new checklist for each day. So is that something that pops up in eBird automatically, or is that something we have to do? How does that work?
Well, if you have the app on your phone, you can create 100 checklists a day if you want. That's entirely up to you and where you are. You'll have opportunity to pick the specific location you're standing at for a stationary observation, or you can choose nearby hotspots. On eBird, there are areas that are identified as hotspots, which can be created by a local birder. Let's say, for example, nearby for me is Kingston Point, and that is, as far as the numbers are concerned, the #1 birding spot in Ulster County. It's grungy, podunk municipal park that is overwhelmed with people most of the year, but from November to March, birders and I guess now doggers own that park, and it's at the mouth of the Rondout. So even if we have a bitter cold stretch like we do now, there's open water. The orientation of the beach is facing north, so southbound gulls will stop and preen and catch a little sun. So that is a hot spot. So if you were nearby and you're on your phone and you wanted to make a list Saturday morning, if you were on our bird walk, you would be able pick nearby, and then you'd see a map and a little icon that has a flame and is a red point that signifies a hotspot. There are
I can walk through it on my computer as well, so they get an idea of that. Sorry to cut you off.
no, that'd probably be more helpful.
So the idea is to just create a new list each time you go out. So if you go out on Saturday and you're at one place and then you go somewhere else later on and you want to record some birds that you see, you make a new list.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really kind of frowned upon to us birders, some of us more crazy birders do things like Christmas bird counts where we're out all day long and scour an area that's called a sector that could be the size of a municipality, let's say, maybe in village size. And it would be nice and easy to turn your phone on and start your checklist, and at the end of your day, which starts usually 4 o'clock in the morning, and then stop it at dark, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and have this one big effort. But that's really something that we would discourage. We consider each time that you unless you're on like I said, a walk in a park, that's one, even though you might stop at various points to see different birds, it's one effort. So that's really how they want that to be described, an effort. I spent 10 minutes looking at my backyard feeders, got in my truck and drove down to Kingston Point. I made one eBird checklist here in my backyard, and a mile away, I made another checklist in a different type of checklist. I can have a stationary one here in my backyard, and then one that, like I said, I can track if I walked 1.5 miles. I can include, if it's with a field trip, how many folks were with me and participated. We have the capability to then share that checklist with others who were on the field trip with us. So yeah, different efforts. And
the idea too is that it's like habitat specific by keeping it, as Mark said, by breaking it up into checklists. Think about like you're studying the habitat and you're giving eBird data specific to that habitat as a way to think about it as well. Should I go ahead and do a little demo here?
I love that idea.
Okay, so I went to eBird.org. I put some links in the chat about like the eBird.org website, as well as some other things that I might mention right now. I've already registered for eBird. I've been registered for a while, so I don't know exactly what it entails. But this is sort of the homepage of the main eBird, and my species observed and number of complete checklists and those kinds of stats. So to submit a list, actually, yes, to submit a list, you go to submit. And I mean, obviously it's different on your phone when you have the mobile app, but the sort of steps are the same. They're in a little bit of a different order. When I submit, so the first thing it wants to know is, where am I? Or where was I? Because I don't think you take your laptop out in the field with you. So this top drop down, these are all locations that I've been to before. So if it's spots that I go to frequently, I'll just pull down the list, find my spot. A lot of these are personal to me. There might be places that I've been before, or places that I frequent. So I will use the same spot when I go back. But like the cool thing, Mark was talking about how when he's going to Connecticut, he's going to a specific county. So you can also find it on a map. And I'm going to put in Ulster. And we're not in Ireland, we're in New York. And this pulls up the map of Ulster County. And you can see all these blue dots. And when I scroll in, so you see there are some blue dots. Blue dots are my personal spots. And then you see the red dots with the flames, and those are the hot spots. So Mark was just referring to Kingston Point. Oops. Kingston Point is a hotspot. I'm way north. So here is Kingston Point, and there are a few hotspots there. You know, I guess if you're at the beach, you would pick this hotspot. So just for the sake of picking one, I'll pick this one. So I can pick that, or if I just put like that green teardrop represents a new spot, but I'm just going to pick this hotspot. And it tells you the name over here. And then I'm going to click continue. So it gives you a date. So today is the 10th. And then you choose your observation type. I mean, the cool thing, if you're in the field with your phone, it actually, you have your GPS on your phone. So when you go to find the location, it already knows where you are. And on your phone, you can also, there's a button to track you. So it will track what you're doing as you're walking. It'll give you the number of miles. After you submit your list, you actually see a little map of where you've been. So traveling would be, you know, you're walking around. I mean, I'm doing desktop. So, you know, say I did it earlier in the day, I'm going to have to guesstimate my miles. Stationary is if you just are standing someplace. If I went to Kingston Point Beach to look at gulls, for example, I'd choose stationary. I don't use historical. You're really going to use traveling, stationary. And incidental is like if you're somewhere and you see some awesome bird and you need to record it, you would choose incidental, because your main purpose isn't birding. You know, you're driving, you see something cool, like Mark says, you whip out your phone, you make a list, you choose incidental, and then you record the species. So I'll just say stationary. And then it asks for a time. And again, when you're on your phone, it starts your list for you. So I'll just say maybe 5 o'clock p.m. Again, I'm doing this after the fact, so I'll say I was a minute. So you can put how many people you're with. If you're with a group of people and you know, only one of you wants to record, I could, you know, make a list of 5 people, and afterwards, like Mark said, I can share it.
And to jump in there, that's what's recommended, in particular for this weekend, but more often than not, any eBird submission, so that there's a kind of a unified submission. But if, let's say, the trip leader sees 40 species and somebody at the back of the line only sees 28, they can adjust their list when they receive it from the person that submitted the eBird list. But that's how we'd like that to be done this weekend. If you do go out with others, an organized trip or just a family party, make one eBird list and then share. Or if others aren't on eBird, just like as Wendy's done there, include the party size of 5, whatever the number is.
So you fill this out and then you click continue, and then you get to the good stuff. And this is where you start recording the species that you see. So you could just go down the list and, you know, I saw 50 Canada geese. I saw a wood duck, and just click in the numbers like that. Also over here, jump to species. If you didn't want to scroll down the list, I like to go down the list because it jogs my memory as to what I've seen while I'm out birding. Because I don't necessarily write it down when I'm birding. So I might go through the list, but if I, start typing up there, it will do a search and it'll take me right to where I, the species I wanted to record.
If we note this list that Wendy is working on too, another nice thing about eBird is this is giving you the expected species or the more realistic encounters that you have. This doesn't have some exotic South American jungle eagle, okay? When down towards the bottom with the northern cardinal that Wendy put on her list, just above that were the warblers. The winter time in the Hudson Valley, the reality is there's just a few species that we could encounter. I'd add maybe another orange crown warbler to that list of 3 species, the yellow throat, the pine, and the yellow rump. But we're not going to have, in reality, the 30, 25 to 30 species that we could see on a May morning, mid-May morning here. Okay, birds are the wise ones. They're in Central and South America right now. So in a lot of ways, eBird kind of funnels you to what's expected. And we all do this with the hopes that someday we're going to find the real rare one in our yard. But the reality is, more often than not, the birds that are presented to you on this list are the birds you're going to encounter.
So Mark and Wendy, if I can interrupt again.
Sure.
For those of us who are not that familiar with bird identification, is there some help on eBird on the website or on the app that can help us key out some of these birds and look for distinguishing characteristics?
Good segue to Merlin, which is part of this eBird experience. And Wendy can.
I've never used Merlin. I haven't used Merlin much, I have to say, but it is a phone app and you install it and it asks you questions like, color of the bird, size of the bird, and it should be able to help identify it. The kind of nice thing now that we're in the middle of the winter is that there are fewer species to know. So that should be a little bit easier that way. My recommendation, and Mark, you may have other recommendations, Merlin for sure, but I think a good like Sibley guide to birds of Eastern North America, like to get a guide that's specific at least to this part of the states, at least part of the state, so it takes out the options of the odd birds that we won't have over here.
Without being too judgy, and I feel obligated to mention Merlin because that's part of the vehicle of eBird, a big part of it, and it's a great tool for a novice. Both Wendy and I are lucky enough to be farther along in our birding abilities. That Merlin came along well after we kind of had found our hobby. I'm in full agreement with Wendy. The bird book, I grew up with a bird book by the window in the kitchen nook to look out at the bird feeders, to be studied and really absorb what you see. Merlin is phenomenal. It's kind of providing you with a in the moment answer, or at least close to the answer of what you're seeing. But to also be able to install the, as Wendy mentioned, the Sibley app on your phone. I just saw Neil put that link there on the chat. You're also getting the vocalizations on your smartphone too with that app. And I'm going to give you my opinion about identification. Merlin goes to a photograph, shows you a photograph, and most of the field guides that I would recommend, Sibley being the first, are all illustrations. So they're kind of capturing a bird as it, with a little artistic license, showing all the identifiable diagnostic field marks encapsulated in an image. A photograph is trying to capture a bird that will drive you to drink, that doesn't expose itself or present itself in good light, or could be wet or in the shade, and can really throw you as to what the bird truly looks like. So I'm going to always point one to a book with illustrations, and the app for the Sibley guide is the book translated to an app. So it's his illustrations, who I will say he's my favorite, David Sibley, favorite bird artist. And he's kind of really brought birding. His field guide was kind of our generation's version of what Peterson did in the 40s. He's brought a whole new wave of interest to birding, and even on a cold winter's night when you can't go out and look at the birds, to have that field guide to thumb through, or there's a companion guide on behavior, which is really awesome to kind of figure out why you saw what you saw today on your walk. Why was this bird doing so and so? So really get to understand the bird. That's something you don't get as a takeaway from Merlin. You've been told what you saw, but
Is there an Eastern Sibley app for the phone? Because
Yeah.
that would be more, the Eastern guide would be more
Yeah.
helpful than
Yeah.
the full-on all Sibley guide. That's just a point or two, because that is overwhelming. To speak
Yes.
to Mark's point about the photos, like, I'm not ashamed to admit that I have a hard time identifying birds by photos sometimes, because photos can be wonky. I'm talking about like maybe something, a photo that someone will take and send to me asking for help. So,
May I ask
So,
a question?
sure.
sure.
I'm Kelly Augenfuss. I'm on the ECC with Neil as well, and I've done this a couple times. If you are undecided on the bird that you're looking at, you see something and you think, well, it could be this or it could be this, and I'm not an expert, so I'm not sure. How do you record that in eBird, or should you not?
I think you do have options. So right here, so you see a bird that is a blackbird. A blackbird could be a grackle, it could be a cowbird, it could be a red-winged blackbird. You may know enough to know that it's a blackbird. You could put blackbird species. Here is sparrow species. So you could put the count under that. There is down at the bottom here, I think, like, if I were an eBird representative, I would say we need every bird recorded. So if you really, really don't know, put one of these, which is really just, I saw a bird. But really, if you look at the different groups, each one ends on like sparrow species, Acanthus spinus species. So those are like a type of finch. So you could use that.
And I would say, don't feel like you need to have a conclusive answer on what bird you saw when you submit your eBird checklist. You can complete a checklist, but you can also go back and edit it. So to be a sponge, I always say in the field, that's the one thing that's easy to get caught up in. Even when you're leading a field trip and you have, let's say, a Girl Scout troop with you, or a group that are a little more unfamiliar with the birds in our region, to whip out the field guide and start looking at the guide, or thumbing through the guide when you're by yourself, rather than keeping your eye on the bird. So really absorb what you see And if that means having a little notebook with you and saying you notice something like the tail bobbing, an action, that's a big thing. Head proportion to the body, posture. Is it more erect when it's on a branch? The type of bill is a huge thing. Does it have a conical bill? Is it a thin bill? Would that indicate one being like a seed or like a finch or a sparrow, or is it a thin bill like a warbler or a flycatcher? So there's little things. Obviously, something that Merlin does, which isn't a bad idea, it says, what are the 3 main colors you see? And that'll get you pretty far right there. That's a simple question to ask. So even if you wrote that down, if you do have a little notebook, abbreviate the 3 colors, what kind of bill, do you notice any real striking things like wing bars? Just those little notes. And then after you've completed your checklist in the field, you could go home and go over those notes with the field guide if you don't have the app on your phone, and kind of come to the conclusion that, the bill was bicolored. I couldn't decide whether it was an American tree sparrow or much less common chipping sparrow this time of year. So, oh yeah, I could see that, the upper mandible is dark and the lower mandible is yellow. It's something, I didn't have a guide to look at in the field, but that is a giveaway for the American tree sparrow, similar species to a chipping sparrow, but that is a diagnostic difference. So don't feel like you gotta, within a minute have exactly what it is. Wendy and I have been birding together for a long time, and there was a day where we found a slaty-backed gull. And you can look in your Funk and Wagnall, they're from Siberia. And we found that in Ulster County, and we knew we had something really good, but we didn't know what the heck we had. That's how good it was. It took a while to figure it all out.
A while, yes.
Yeah.
So I'll continue filling out my fake list here. So eBird, one good thing about eBird is if you put something in that's like way off, it's going to tell you. So I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna type, this was a rare bird. Oh no, it's not showing up. Am I spelling this right? FR?
Yeah.
It's no add species. All right, let's do this. If I do show rarities, I would leave show rarities not checked off. Ginormous, and you see all of these new species on the list with rare. So if I were to try to put in this ferruginous, I don't even know if I said that correctly. If I go to put that in, eBird is going to be like, whoa, this is rare. And it's not going to let you submit your list until you give some text saying, why is this what you're seeing? It's going to ask for habitat, a description. What was it about the bird that made you think it was that? So eBird is going to sort of check you on that kind of stuff. You can enter media. So if you get photos, you can upload those as proof. But I mean, you could also upload photos because you like taking pictures of birds and you like to, go back and see what you did on that day, and you want to just, record pictures for your own pleasure. The other thing with eBird too is the counts that you put in. If I put in a count of, let me see if I can get that to happen. If I put in a count of like 500, like I could even put in a count of like 1,000. What do you think? 1,000?
Yeah, more than that. Yeah.
5,000. I'll put 2,000. Like, I don't think that eBird will blink about 2,000 Canada geese. That's something that we all see all around. But if I go down back to like, let's see, if I were to say that I saw, well, ruby-throated hummingbird at this time of the year right now is rare. But let me see, if I go back down to my cardinal, it was like I saw 500 cardinals, eBird's gonna freak out. It actually won't freak out now when I go to submit it. maybe freak out isn't the right word, but it is going to catch me, and it's going to be like, how did you come up with 500 cardinals? You don't see 500 cardinals. So there are some checks when you're entering in here.
There's a lot of built-in filters, and Wendy is showing this to you as an example, but you have that choice to not show the rarities, which
Yeah.
I would recommend the way so there's great. Yeah, that's
Oh, it is. It is like, doesn't like 2,000 Canada geese.
okay.
That's a lie.
This filter kind of is one extra step to make sure that you're confident and can explain your sighting. Wendy chose ferruginous hawk for a reason. One, this about a month now, has been seen in Orange County, and it serves as the easternmost sighting of that species that's ever been recorded. And it's a bird you can look up now, but it's very similar to our red-tailed hawk, bigger than a red-tailed, that frankly, most of us, even serious birders, probably if it was off in a distant tree, would have glanced and said, another RT, another red tail, and kept on going. But that's an important lesson to bird every bird. It's quite different to look at it closely from a red tail, but on a fleeting glimpse and with what you'd expect it to be, pretty special bird to run into, and hundreds of people from the region have gone to see this bird in Orange County past few weeks.
So I am going to, if I don't want to scare you with these things. I just wanted you to see what happens when I'm just going to.
Yeah, even if it's an accidental thing, your finger stays on the 0 for an extra second that a number you didn't intend to put. It's got a lot of built-in catches and filters.
Let's see. Is that going to get, so I'm not going to fix those. So you would go through, so one thing I'm going to point out and mention briefly for the bird, the for the bird count this weekend, you don't necessarily have to put any of these details. You could make notes, you could add photos. There are age and sex data, breeding code data, oiled bird data. I'm going to save a little spiel about breeding codes for the end of this, after we go through this, because that's all I'll say. So once you go through, go ahead.
I just throw in too that to add media, this is a fun time of year to listen for owls in the evening, in the dark.
Yep.
So to record the great horned owl duetting, a couple duetting in your neighborhood can be included on your submission there. So that's going to be a fun thing to try to do. Yep.
Yes, and listen, hearing a bird does count as a bird. That is a count. So when you filled out your list, in the bottom right hand corner here, it's going to say, are you submitting a complete checklist? You say yes, and then you submit it. I'm not going to do that right now because I would have to delete it at some point. But after you've submitted it, you can, I don't remember if I go to, no, cancel, submit. There's a spot in here you can see all of your lists, and you can go, you can share
My
from
eBird.
Is it?
My eBird.
It's right there. So here are these are all my stats, but under manage my checklists, these are actually checklists that were shared with me. So if I were to go to this list, which was the last one I made, where do you share on here? They've changed everything.
You have to click on the list itself.
Here's I had my mobile app on me, And you can see, this is the track I took while I was birding that day. It recorded, I walked 18/10 of a mile. I was one person. I was for 15 minutes. So you too would have this if you submitted a list in eBird. And then if I went to share, I could enter someone else's name. I could enter Mark's name and I could share it off with him. He would get notification that I shared it with him and he could accept it. And then it would be added to his checklists as well. So a lot of good stuff with eBird and checklists, and you're keeping your own record, but you're also helping science and conservation, and it's all good. Any questions about eBird? I was going to show one more thing after this, just while I'm in the browser.
Sure, go ahead.
Did someone have a question? No question.
Nope, go ahead.
Okay. So one thing, what did I do with it? So Mark was mentioning about hotspots and like finding cool places to go in the county. So if you go to eBird and you go up to explore, that takes you to this page. And this is fun. You can go to Ulster County, and that's going to bring up that map of the county, and I'm going to go there. Or if you're looking for a specific species of bird, you could enter the species name and then you can zoom in. It brings you to a big map, and then you would zoom into the area and you could see different spots on a map where people have seen that species. But if I go to Ulster, and this is looking different.
You could pick that common raven submission there.
Going to pick this.
So that was a submission I made yesterday that I mentioned. My common ravens, we're adding sticks. You can put a little note in and also include a breeding code, which confirms that species is again breeding there. It's only the second time that common ravens have bred in the city of Kingston. That's not what you wanted.
I wanted to get the list. Oh, hotspots. Yes. They've changed this like within the past couple months. So I'm in Ulster. If I go to hotspots, you can see all the hotspots in the area. You can see the number of species that have been identified. And you can click into them, and you can be on here and go on forever and ever. Really, if you want to have some fun, I would, check out the Explore. The other thing, if you've ever like Googled a bird, like you will get, where did I put that? All about, let me see. There's the Cornell site, All About Birds. And that is a great site if you wanted to find out more information about a bird. Actually, anytime I Google a bird, it brings me the All About Birds entry. There are photos, you can listen to it. It also will show like similar species. So just wanted to point this out as well. Could I make a quick plug for the Breeding Bird Atlas before we go? So if you like, recording bird sightings and you're into birding and you like the idea of helping out with citizen science, New York State is in the midst of its third Breeding Bird Atlas. A Breeding Bird Atlas is done every 20 years, and it's volunteers, people entering information on eBird across the state to document breeding birds, species and behaviors all across the state. It's a great source for, conservation efforts. It tells us a lot about how birds are doing, whether they're doing well or not so well. And atlasing is a little bit different than just birding. For years and years, many years, I would be a birder and I would be like, I'm going out into the field and I'm going to just identify a bird and I'm going to check it off. And that was my focus. When you are birding for the Breeding Bird Atlas, you're really like slowing down, spending some time, and you're really watching what the bird is doing. So you're learning so much more than just identification. Like I saw robins on nests, which you think, oh, that is a common thing, but really, it took me consciously slowing down to start looking at and documenting these behaviors. I spent my lunch period an hour in a parking lot in the heat of the summer, and I confirmed many birds, including getting my eyes on a baby killdeer, a recently fledged killdeer, which is confirmation of that bird breeding in that parking lot. And it's really like a nice continuation, addition to birding if you're interested in nature and interested in citizen science. We use eBird to collect data, but there's a different portal that you would enter that Breeding Bird Atlas data for. Anyways, I included a link in the chat if you want to learn more about the Atlas, and I'll be doing webinars and Zoom meetings. So maybe I'll reach out to you and invite you all to come and learn some more.
We thank you both for your time and your knowledge. Really appreciate it. Tanya's typing a message thanking everybody. She's looking forward to participating with her daughter, who's 10 years old. I don't know if the chat's going to be recorded. I hope so, because there's a lot of great links in there. So what I might do is follow up with Mark and Wendy with some links and make sure that we've got everything. And maybe I'll put that into a little note or into the announcement when we post the video. Hopefully tomorrow. I'll try to edit it later tonight and post it up so that we've got it up tomorrow, so people can tune in if they want to and they didn't get a chance to join us this evening. And I'll send those links to you guys and follow up.
I just want to say also thank you, Wendy and Mark. The best thing that I've ever done when I started birding was going out with the group, Mark and Burroughs. It was the best. Everybody was so knowledgeable. I picked my favorite spots that I would go by myself then, and what did I want to see. But there is nothing compared with going out with your group. Everyone is so helpful and knowledgeable. And I hope, I don't know how large groups you take out these days, but I sure pray that we can be doing this also in the springtime.
Yeah, right now we're operating with this 10 individuals in a field trip, and everybody wears masks, everybody tries to stay socially distanced, no sharing of optics. With you want to be responsible, but we're all itching to get back to have a little bit of a sense of normalcy, and our field trips were our vehicle for doing that. We didn't do this kind of thing for sure. Occasionally we'd speak at libraries in front of a group, or like I said, with scouts, but we want to get back in the swing of things and have field trips. And Joanne, I know you went to Galeville, to the grasslands.
My favorite spot in the world.
Right, and that's understandable, and real sense of camaraderie and a shared interest, and believe me, we're all looking forward to more normal times in that realm.